Here in France, a recent report by the National Food Security Agency sounded the alarm over the amount of toxic heavy metals in French food, warning that the French were overexposed to cadmium every time they sat down to eat. Cadmium occurs naturally in the Earth's crust, but the report said it was now at worrying levels in pasta, rice, wheat and more. Solange Madon looks at why it is.
The joy of a croissant, a baguette, cereal or potatoes. Food that tastes good, provides energy, but may also be toxic and cancerous, and particularly in France. The culprit, cadmium. ANSES, the French Agency for Food Safety, has issued a plea to lawmakers to act as soon as possible and lower the levels of cadmium in all sorts of food produced in France. The report found that not only have levels nearly doubled in the past decade, but over 47% of the population has in their bodies cadmium levels above the critical threshold. It's 2 to 3 times higher in France than other EU nations and North America. The report also found that among non-smokers, nearly all of that cadmium, or 98%, comes from food and of all sorts. So why does France in particular have a cadmium problem, and how is it getting into the nation's food? One of France's main suppliers of phosphate, which is used in pesticides and fertilizers, is Morocco. And in Moroccan phosphate, there is a particularly high level of cadmium. In other nations like Norway and Finland, their phosphate has lower quantities of cadmium. For some 15 years, alarm bells have been ringing about this heavy metal. It is classified as cancerous at the highest level. In 2019, ANSES called for France's safety threshold to be lowered to that of other EU nations. In June 2025, doctors said France was facing a looming health bomb, with a potential spike in pancreatic, liver, lung, prostate and breast cancers. A concern reconfirmed by the latest report.
If the current levels of exposure remain the same and no action is taken, harmful effects are likely for an increasingly large portion of the population.
The authority recommends cutting back on wheat, which can have high levels. They say that without greater regulation, foods like cereal, cookies, crackers, pasta and potatoes will continue to be poisoned by cadmium-heavy pesticides.
Well, said to be harmful even at low concentrations, cadmium, like other heavy metals, does not break down and so in the body accumulates over time. On further reading, however, it would appear it's not the only toxic heavy metal we are ingesting, more or less worldwide. Reports show that some 17% of the world's croplands have been contaminated. Arsenic, lead and mercury, other examples. So what exactly could they do to us and how can we avoid them or improve our diet? Well, to give us more insight, we're joined by Dr. Jagannath Biswakarma. Thanks so much for your time. Environmental scientist studying all that for us. Can I start by asking you, these heavy metals, we're apparently eating them at increasing levels. I mean, how worried should we be?
Thank you. Cadmium particularly is a toxic heavy metal that occurs naturally, as you said correctly, in our Earth's planet. And they are dangerous. Heavy metal metalloids like cadmium, arsenic, lead, mercury, they are dangerous to our human health because it can accumulate in our body. It can create damages to kidneys. It can also impact our skeleton. We may be more prone to fractures. And many of these heavy metal and metalloids are also linked to cancers. Like, for example, by smoking, we inhale a lot of toxic pollutants, and cadmium particularly can cause, for example, lungs cancer. So they are toxic and dangerous, but the amount at which we are uptaking these heavy metals and metalloids is alarming at the moment.
And why, given that they were always in our environment, is it simply down to pesticides or is it something else that's going on, that it's more and more in our foods?
You're right. They are ubiquitous. They are naturally present. But because of human activities, we are creating an ecosystem, an environment which activate their release to the soil, to the water, to the irrigated water. For example, mining, metal smelting, a lot of battery production. They use lot of heavy metals and metalloids, and they are exposed. Their exposure to the environment is readily accelerated by human activities, and that leads to accumulation by plants. Like, for example, plants can easily uptake these heavy metals and metalloids through soil. So food, the crop plant, as you mentioned correctly, 17% of those across the globe are contaminated with heavy metals and metalloids right now.
So when the report came out here in France, they listed the food that we should ultimately try and avoid. But I mean, it was so vast. It was pasta, potatoes, spinach, and then you hear, well, that's for cadmium, but there's arsenic in rice. I mean, what can we safely eat?
This is a very scary question, but we have science, have solutions, and we are, as a scientist, we are proactively negotiating with policymakers that we should have stricter policy regulations in the front of environment and water, because the presence of any kind of heavy metals and metalloids in food depends mainly on the soil contamination, mainly on the soil and water quality. So the things that we are putting into the soil and underneath the water, for example, fertilizers, there has to be strict rules and regulation. In EU, we have in 2016, fertilizers regulation number 2003 was revamped and was revised. But I think we need to create an ecosystem policy which is more strict and more dose efficient. So we need to better understand the toxicity level of these cadmiums in our body, and we must adhere to those numbers when we formulate policies.
But that feels like to stop matters getting worse. But is there anything we can do to nearly clean the soil or improve the situation as it is?
Yeah, soil remediation can be done for sure. So, like if government or NGOs coming up with plans that can remediate soil contamination issues, that will be very highly helpful. But we need to think long term, because soil retain memories. It can and we need to also have a proper monitoring system, because not every soil within France behaves similar way. So it's not a one shoe fit all solutions, but we need to have we do have solutions. Now, how the science can translate into policy to practice is a bit of a challenge here. And that's the challenge we need to convert into opportunities to mitigate these harmful impacts of heavy metals and metalloids.
And given that they're in our soil, I mean, does it make any difference whether we try and eat organic or not when it comes to these heavy metals?
Unfortunately not. Both conventional and organically produced food can contain any kind of heavy metals or metalloids. So, of course, organic farming has many benefits, but it doesn't automatically guarantee a lower cadmium or any kind of metals or metalloids issue.
Okay, well, I have to say it still sounds quite alarming on the global front, but I'm glad to hear that some solutions potentially exist. Dr. Jagannath Biswakarma, thanks so much for your time and bringing us your insight here on France 24. Very much appreciated.